I was sent to Korea for my university a few years ago. They told me for my major, I had to go somewhere in Asia. My friend had really talked up Korea for me. I knew nothing about it, but I decided what the hell, and I embarked on a semester-long trip. I had only had one serious boyfriend in my life, who I had broken up with a few months prior to this. I also don't enjoy one-night stands, and wasn't digging the dudes at the clubs in Seoul, but I still wanted to have some sort of romantic experience. So my friend recommended that I use a dating app to meet English-speaking Koreans. That way, I could meet someone and experience the actual dating culture there. I thought I'm young, so why not? I was so eager to have new experiences. Maybe it sounds dumb trying to date in a foreign country, but it worked out for me eventually. Just not on the first date. I met him on a dating app after being in Seoul about 3 weeks. Let's call him Tim. I didn't know the culture or the city very well, and was a bit naive about everything. He eagerly wanted me to go for a date after talking to me, and he seemed really nice. I should have asked more questions to him, and I should have noticed that he was not giving me many details about himself. Tim was a guy a little bit older than me, but claimed he was a college student. I assumed he had done his military time, as all Koreans have to do it, and just returned to school afterwards. We had talked for a bit and then decided to go on a tea date near the school I went to. He wanted to come to my dorm originally to pick me up, but I live in an all-women's dorm and I didn't want him to know exactly where I lived since we were still just strangers. So instead, I insisted we meet at the town center near the subway. He really didn't like that idea, which looking back was totally a red flag, but eventually I just insisted. The night of the date, I waited an hour for this guy. He was very late. Tim weirdly claimed that he just wanted to make me wait. I thought he was kidding and messaged him the laughing emoji, assuming he was just lost. When he finally arrived, he was much smaller than I thought, but a man's height has never been something that I cared too much about. He was also quite thin. Maybe I'd let my guard down because I didn't seem as physically threatening to me, which was a mistake in the end. Right off the bat, he was way too touchy with me and breathed creepily and heavily. I was so off-put with his demeanor. I'm usually very tolerant with different personality types, but this was very odd to me. I had been told that Korean men would be polite and not so touchy on the first date. He was also dressed oddly like in business attire for a date, but I thought maybe it's just a Korean thing. Again, I was dumb and knew jack shit about the culture. Then, the first thing he said to me was, "You're not as white as I thought you were." I thought this was a translation error, but his English was near perfect. So I asked for clarification, and he said what he meant. "I thought you would be more white. Your skin's darker than I thought, and your eyes aren't as green. Are you pure European?" Now I was officially weirded out. First of all, I'm pretty much as white as you can get. I'm Irish and Scandinavian, so white as hell basically. So the fact that he thought that I could have possibly been whiter was funny. Why did he care about it in the first place though? Why does my skin color matter to this guy? Why was he bringing it up? He asked about 3 times on the date how he wished I had greener eyes, and every time I would just reply, "Well, maybe my online photos make me look brighter," and brushed it off as him being nervous and trying to start a conversation. Isn't it funny the dumb excuses you make for people when you're kinda panicked? When we arrived at the tea place, I tried to order a basic raspberry tea, and he stopped me and told me that he wants me to have the specialty. I thought it was weird he wanted to choose my tea for me, but in my head, I brushed it off again. He really insisted I only drink this tea type, and I just decided to agree. These small details become weirder later. After the tea, he asked if he could look around my school. It was dark, but the school is very well lit, so I agreed. And the whole time we walked around, he would randomly stop and grab me for very long hugs. At first, I just let it happen, but then I stopped him. But he just kept trying more and more. He kept grabbing me and breathing hard into my neck. It was so awkward. He also would not tell me any personal details about himself. I asked so many questions, desperately trying to distract from all the awkward grabbing and try to get to know him, but he would never tell me anything. He even said at one point, "I'm a mysterious man," like it was some kind of movie line he had set up. He also told me something like, "You look so much like my favorite movie character," and when I asked him who, he said that I would have to figure it out on my own. Finally, he randomly said, "I want to go to a dark area," and in my head, I screamed, "Hell no." At this point, I wanted the date to be over fast. He somehow knew that there was a wooded area behind my campus, and he said we should go there. I told him no, and that I wanted to stay near the main campus in town, but he kept pushing. Finally, he grabbed my arm and started dragging me there. He said, "I can't let anyone see," and then I started to panic. I finally ripped my arm away. It just demanded that we leave and go back to the main road immediately. Looking back, I don't know why I didn't ask for help or get angry. Maybe I was just scared, but I just began to book it back to the main road, and he followed. We ended up in front of a hospital near the center of town, and I told him it was time for him to go, and I made some excuse, and he was pleading with me to stay. I told him we could meet the next day. I lied, of course, and I would message him. I just wanted to get away from him at this point. I was pretending it was all okay, just so he would leave me alone. Suddenly, he's leaning in to kiss me, and I immediately think, oh god no, but it was so much worse. Instead, I felt pain in my face. It takes me seconds to realize he was biting my face. It was like a dog. I had never felt that sensation before. He leaned his head sideways and bit me on my nose and my cheek as hard as he could. I screamed and pushed him away from me. His face looked so freaky, and I barely had time to react in words. Instead, I ran up the sidewalk until I saw a convenience store on the right. I ran to the back of the store and bent over and started to cry. The man who owned the store started to yell at me, but I couldn't explain my situation. I just begged him in English to let me stay. I ended up having to buy a popsicle to stay around. God, I wish I learned some Korean by then. I guess Tim didn't follow me. I peered outside the store and I didn't see him. I texted a friend and waited on them to take me back to my dorm. On the way, I messaged Tim and basically told him to stay away from me. I told him that he was a creep and that he shouldn't bite women and something along the lines of calling the police, and then I blocked him. I was so scared to walk around my school area after that. I was so afraid he would find me somehow. I'm so thankful I never let him pick me up from my dorm. I called my mom to tell her what happened, and she suddenly said, "Wait, what did he ask you?" She then put some details together and realized that all these weird things had to do with the 50 Shades of Grey book. At first, I thought she was just being silly and overthinking a bad date. I thought she was joking, but oh my god, she was right. She had recently seen the movie or read the book or something. She just knew the details. The eye color, and the way he was dressed, and the tea he made me drink, and the random lines he said, it all matches the books and movies. I guess he did it all for some kind of dirty little fantasy he had. My mom thinks he picked me because I look like the girl in the movie to him. It explains why he was so fixated on my appearance, and his whole thing with biting and trying to dominate me. Even if it wasn't his intention, I later learned that there were some creeps who seek out foreign girls to dominate, have sex with like a prize. They call it riding the white horses or something along those lines. On a happier note, this bad experience didn't stop me. I eventually met someone else in Korea and we ended up falling in love. We even did the whole long distance thing. And now I'm living in Korea studying and working, hoping to marry soon. So I guess I didn't let bad creepy guys stop my life. As for Tim, let's not meet. It's been years, but I'll still kick your ass if I see you, and I won't have to bite you. During my freshman year of university, about 4 years ago, I was quite tired and lonely because I didn't really make any friends and my 2 majors were pretty overwhelming. To pass time, I was browsing Reddit quite often. I even submitted an ad to find people to talk to. I get several responses, mostly from the US, though one was from my European country. It surprised me a bit, since not many people there knew what Reddit is, but I was also glad I met someone local. This guy seemed cool. He worked for a global IT firm and played piano, just like me. We talked, we exchanged a few emails, and it felt nice. Then, one day, he told me that if I passed my last exam, we'll have a date. Quite pushy, right? I didn't want a date, to be honest, but I wanted to meet him. So, when I left the exam hall, I was sitting on the train home. I recalled his offer. He said he'd been in my hometown that day. First, I got home and tried to dress properly. I out of nowhere suddenly started to feel weak. I had a huge heartache, and I had to rest for a moment. I called the guy and told him I'd be a bit late. Then he said something like, "But don't think that'll be a date." Well, he didn't say it, he rather screamed it. Okay. I promised I'd be there, so I arrived to the place and I saw him eating dinner, alone. I sat next to him and he didn't even bother to ask me what I wanted. He was cold, just like this February day. Ironic and not nice at all. He simply said that I ruined his day by only being 30 minutes late, and that there was no future for us. Then I realized how snobbish he was. Though being a relatively nice person, I tried to make the evening better. I asked him if he wanted to go to the cinema, museum, church, whatever. He just said no. He only wanted to go to the train station. Remote train station, that is, not the main one. We started to walk towards the station. It was dark, wintry, and our path wasn't lit up at all. My high heels were covered in mud, and I didn't really like it. We didn't talk at all, because we were fed up with each other. So when we reached the station, I was relieved. I said goodbye, and then he kissed me on my forehead. What the hell? Then I felt a bit better. A bit. Because I had to get to the bus station on the other side of town. I had to take the same road we walked, and it gave me chills. I was walking for a while, when I heard a voice behind me. "Hey, miss!" I turned around, and I saw 3 guys wearing hoodies. I started to walk faster, and I didn't even answer. "Hey, miss, you lost something," I heard again. But I didn't turn this time. I didn't lose anything. No way. "Miss, wait," I heard again, and I sprinted shouting, "No!" I agreed it was strange and difficult. High heels are not racing shoes by any means. They started to run after me. You don't even know how scared I was. At least I was close to a better well-lit area. I saw the tram station and an older woman standing there. I rushed there and approached her. Then I saw these 3 men standing on the other side of the road. I knew they were waiting for me. I called my friend who lived nearby. He said he was at the dorms, but he'd get there ASAP. I was shaking, being watched by these 3 guys. I realized one was holding something glowing in the dark. What was it? Was it a knife? I don't think I want to know. My friend arrived, and he was quite a big man. He tried to chase the 3 guys, but they disappeared into the dark. He took me to the other train station building. We were sitting there for a while. I was trembling and crying, and he was holding my hand all the time. He gave me money for a cab, and I went home. My parents weren't happy about this. They said it was my fault. Was it really? I hope I'll never meet these men again, and you, my date, well, I don't want to ruin your day again, I guess. This particular experience was obviously not life-threatening, but it was a doozy of a night, y'all. I'll let you guys be the judge. And sorry for the formatting, I'm on mobile. Background. This happened about 7 years ago. I'm female, 5'2", and petite, so I try to be extra careful because I have some pretty close calls. This night, I clearly had a lapse of judgment. Also, I do not do hard drugs, but during my college years, I drank a fair amount and smoked copious amounts of marijuana. Anyways, here's me presenting to you my date from hell. I waited tables for 7 years, working my way through college. I served all kinds of people during that time and grew very comfortable with working with the general public, playing up small talk, putting on a friendly demeanor, and more importantly, waiting the hell out of some tables. I was pretty good at my job, so I enjoyed my work most of the time, aside from the occasional douchebag customer. My restaurant was right off the highway, next to several large hotels. Most ran between $90 and $150 a night. Not the worst, not the best. I'd often get tables from people who were staying at these hotels, who would walk over for a meal more than one night in a row if they were staying longer than one day. This is how I met Bob. Bob came in on a busy night, sat quietly by himself, and required minimal effort. He ordered only cobbler and coffee, which he ate quickly. I sent him on his way, to-go coffee in hand, with minimal talk at all. I noticed he smiled at me. Eyes lingered a bit longer than normal, and immediately knew he was just interested in me. Most women know the look. Despite this, he left without saying anything else, and I thought that was the end of it. He also gave me a fat tip. Since he had a small order, he had left me almost 90% gratuity, so hell yeah. The next night at work, he's back. He requested my section this time. Again orders modestly. No actual meal. Leaves a great tip, but barely says more than a few words. Barely any more than it takes to place his order. Cool. Minimal effort, maximum reward. I dig it. We repeat this 3 nights in a row until he finally at the end of night 3 opens up to me and tells me a bit about himself. He is staying at the hotel next door for his job, working on cell phone towers and telephone poles. He will be in the area for several months. He shows me pictures on his phone of him in gear at the top of very high towers, and this story seems to check out. He wraps all this info up by asking for my phone number. I find him relatively attractive, not crazy good looking, but he had a good smile. He was barrel-chested, a big dude with curly hair that was shaggy but nice. The kinds of curls women would pay big money for, I thought. I was a bit lonely at the time, and he seemed normal, so I agreed to give him my number. Over the next few days, we made small talk, but nothing substantial. Looking back, aside from his employment, I learned almost nothing about Bob during this conversation period. Nothing that sticks with me anyways. It was all meaningless small talk via text. Finally, I agreed to grab a drink with him on the 4th of July weekend, and having no prior plans for the holiday, I was excited to have something to do. Usually, I would have insisted I meet him somewhere public to protect myself, but I had been interacting with him for over a week, so my guard was dropping. Stupid, right? He suggests we smoke prior to hitting the bar. I like this idea, and not wanting to go to his hotel room for obvious reasons, I reluctantly agree my place would probably be best since it's closer to downtown anyway. I give him my apartment information, my 1-bedroom apartment where I live alone. This is stupid of me. The night arrives and he's punctual. Both of us have some weed. We are very well supplied. It's important to mention, I'm also a very experienced smoker and have lots of different methods to choose from. Pipes, steamrollers, papers, blunt wraps, etc. I ask what he preferred, and he says, bong. Of course, the one thing I don't have. Mine had recently broken. I tell him so, and suggest a blunt or a bowl, but he insists he wants a bong rip. I tell him I don't know where he would get a bong this late. He insists he knows where, and we must have a bong rip. So I allow him to ferry me into a shadier gas station in the area to purchase not only a large glass bong, but also a grinder and a lighter, even though I had this stuff well supplied at home. We return, he gets his bong rip. I find the whole thing odd, but brush it off and enjoy my buzz. Bob has me roll a joint after several bong hits. I finish and go to light up, and he stops me. Let's smoke that on the way to the bar, he says. I live less than a 10-minute drive from the bars and tell him so. I also tell him it's a holiday weekend, so cops will be on full force and that I should probably just play it safe. He steamrolls my objections and insists that we will be fine and I'm worrying for nothing. I tell him I'm not comfortable with it and he just repeats himself. Red flag. Apparently, I have no choice in the matter, so we leave and head off to the bars, joint a-burnin'. We arrive safely. Bob parks in a very obvious pay-to-park lot. These lots are heavily patrolled by 2 companies, but are usually staffed by an automatic machine where you can pay. However, since this was a holiday weekend, there was an actual person attendant as well. Bob parks, and we begin to walk towards the bar, making no move toward the machine to pay. I warn him this is a heavily towed lot, but he once again steamrolls over my warning and tells me it'll be fine. FYI, I knew this would not be fine. He would 100% get towed if he didn't pay before we went inside. The parking attendant comes jogging over to us, trying to get our attention, as I try unsuccessfully to convince him paying is not optional, but he never stops walking. Finally, the attendant nears enough towards us in our direction to say, "Hey man, you gotta pay to park or you'll get towed." Without an ounce of humor in his voice, cold, chilling, and completely unlike anything I'd heard come out his mouth all night, he replied just loudly enough to be heard by the man, "If I get towed, I'll fucking stab you." What the fuck? My legs almost gave out in shock. My brain clicks that I may be in danger. The parking attendant mutters something about towing and walks off. I decided then and there that he is definitely not my ride anymore. All bets are off because he just threatened to stab the parking attendant. I needed to ditch him, somehow safely. I take a step back, putting distance between us, but I keep pace with him as we walk towards the bar. I tell him, "What the fuck was that? You know you're definitely getting towed now that you threatened the guy." He just says, "I was joking," and I reply with, "You didn't say it like it was a joke," and he definitely didn't laugh. Bob was just like, "It wasn't serious." I let him know I didn't like his behavior. Now in an increasingly crowded area, the witnesses made me bolder. I developed a plan in my head, hoping I could discreetly phone a cab from the ladies' room and run for it, using the crowd as cover, but Now he knew where I lived, no fixing that, but hopefully his car being towed would slow him down a bit. Bob just continued to insist that it had been all one hilarious joke as we entered bar number 1, that I totally misunderstood it, that I just couldn't take a joke. I knew better. His voice had been deadly serious and ice cold. My instincts told me that he was serious about his threat. I continued planning my escape in my head while he testifies in innocence. I needed to bide time till the right moment, so I waited uncomfortably and suddenly aware of how he'd been acting erratically all night and that I was just now noticing. I feel my gut twist inside me. I was scared now, and I felt like an idiot for brushing off the warning signs earlier. He clearly wasn't balanced, but if he'd want to kill me, you'd think he already done it now, right? In the safety of my 1-bedroom apartment, I hung my hopes high on this thought. We enter bar number 1, and it's obvious I'm miffed by the encounter in the parking lot. He never did pay, and Bob seems annoyed by this. Bob puts a card down on the bar and starts a tab. We order drinks. I take mine directly from the bartender and watch it like it's my fucking job. Bob fiddles with his phone when suddenly he grunts in annoyance. Its battery had died. In BD, right? No. He proceeds to tell me that he was in the middle of transferring money between his accounts when his phone died. That he was putting money on the card that the bartender was holding for a tab, but since his battery died before he finished, there was no money on that card. I immediately offered to pay for the drinks. He could take back his card. I'd pay cash. Already, I just wanted the night to be over. Bob says, "There's an ATM in bar number 2, right across the street. I can get cash there. I don't want you to pay. We can go to bar number 2 really quickly. We don't even close out this tab. We will just come back and pay for it. I've been inside bar number 2 many times. I'm very more comfortable there in bar 1. I'm even friends with one of the bar backs, so I'm hoping perhaps he can help me escape my nightmare date as gracefully as possible with minimal risk." I send a silent prayer that he's working tonight, and I agree wholeheartedly to just dip right out of there. Tab unpaid, debit card left behind. He's coming back to pay it anyways, right? So we get to bar number 2. The ladies' room is right next to the ATM, and as he's using it, I never actually saw if he successfully got cash or not. I excuse myself and slip into the ladies' room. I must be the luckiest chick in the world, because my friend Heather, bless her soul, came stumbling out of the stall behind me as I was staring hopelessly into the mirror above the sinks, silently cursing my own stupidity and wishing I was anywhere else but this current predicament. I was saved. Relief washed over me in a wave, and I ran into her arms and hugged her violently, telling her about my weird date, how he'd been erratic all night and threatened to stab the parking attendant not 30 minutes ago in this creepy-ass voice, and most importantly, how I didn't want him to drive me home anymore, how I just wanted to get away, but I needed a ride. Heather turned out to be out with her husband and friends, some of which I actually knew. We made a plan. She'd walk with me over to the table, and I'd sit with them. They'd keep an eye on me as I explained to Bob that I wasn't feeling a connection. I wanted to finish the night out with my friends. They'd keep me safe and drive me home later. We planned the whole speech, but I never had to use it. I walked out of the bathroom door, and he was gone. I didn't see him again that night, nor did he text me. Heather filled everyone in, and the guys were really sweet about it, putting me at the center seat, so I was obscured from view mostly by passerbys. A sick feeling in my gut tells me that he stuck around and watched me join the boys at Heather's table, and maybe even sit a little low in my chair. My friends took me all the way to my door that night after the bars, making sure I was safely inside. Left alone on my coffee table, there was the glass bong, brand new grinder and lighter Bob had insisted on buying. Probably paid $60 for, then maybe only took 3 hits off. The worst part, when I walked into my bathroom after kicking off my heels, having just got home, I noticed a small glass thing on the side of my bathtub, which I noticed as I sat on the toilet to pee. I picked up, and it was the size of a tub of lip balm, but fatter and rounder. When I inspected it closely, I found it to be full of loose white powder on the inside. It seemed to be contained on one side, while the other half was empty and had a hole on top. I determined it closely. I was pretty sure it was Coke, but I'd never seen anything like it in a glass contraption before. Realizing Bob had used my bathroom and it had to be his, I freaked out, thinking that he would surely come back for his drugs if he left them behind on accident. He never did though, and out of paranoia, I tucked the thing deep into my closet, afraid if he did return for it, I better have it. After a month though, I just tossed it. The whole thing just baffled me. If he was short on money, why would he insist on making a special trip to buy something that he didn't really need? Had he ever returned to pay the tab? Did he leave me stranded because I was obviously turned off by his threat? Did he get embarrassed and just leave? He certainly didn't seem like the type, but I clearly made a misjudgment about him somewhere. Was he just impossibly a coked out dude? Like, what the hell was that? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because it's baffled me for years. Bob went radio silent for a month. Then he texted me 3 times in 1 week. I didn't respond. The next week, he showed up at my work, requesting my section again. I was shocked to see him, and he'd spotted me already, so I decided to speak to him at least, but give the table away to another server. He acted as if nothing had ever happened. Asked me why I didn't respond to his text. I told him I was busy. He said he'd like to hang out again. I said I didn't think so. He asked, why not? I replied with, he left me at bar 2. He said, that's not exactly what happened. Me, regardless, you were my ride. You know that. You didn't try texting or calling me. You've got my number. You were gone when I came out the bathroom, but luckily, I found some friends, so it didn't matter. I'd walked away at that point and let someone else get him his cobbler. He didn't try to argue against my statement that he'd left me stranded at the bar, at the very least, nor did he mention the cocaine he left in my bathroom. Bob continued to text me occasionally over the next 3 years, every 3 to 6 months. A one-word text came through, hey, testing the waters, I guess. I never answered. I keep his number saved in my phone so I don't accidentally answer a text to this very day, just in case, should he ever try again. So Bob, let's never meet again, you freaking coked out weirdo.